Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we'll be doing the chapter Being Neighborly for HSC Class 11. This chapter is by Louisa May Alcott, and many of you know the story by the movie Little Women. Now, if you haven't seen the movie, no worries because this is just a small part. But if you have seen the movie, you already know what's going on. You know the characters, you know the background, right? So let's get started. No big deal if you haven't seen the movie. It's very straightforward. The chapter is very simple and actually very fun and very nice, correct? So let's start. This is a story with the main characters being four sisters: Jo, Meg, Beth and Amy. They're the Marches. And you have Laurie, the boy who lives in the neighboring house. The chapter is called Being Neighborly, wherein the people from the Marches house, they are showing their neighborly behavior, or their duty as a neighbor towards the neighbor boy named Laurie, right? Okay. "What in the world are you going to do now, Jo?" asked Meg one snowy afternoon as her sister came tramping through the hall in rubber boots, old sack and hood, with a broom in one hand and a shovel in the other. Now Meg, a sister, and she's asking her sister Jo, what in the world are you going to do now? Meaning, what is she going to do in such a time, right? It's a snowy afternoon and she's coming out wearing, her rubber boots, an old sack. What's a sack? So it's like, it's a jacket with a hood, right? You can call it a hoodie basically. With a broom in one hand and a shovel in the other. "Going out for exercise," answered Jo with a mischievous twinkle in her eyes. Now Jo is this one lively girl, right? So she is always doing some chore around the house. She loves to read. She is very social as a person, and she doesn't like to sit idle. She'll always be doing something, doing something productive, helping around the house. So now Jo says she's going out for exercise. "I should think 2 long walks this morning would have been enough. It's cold and dull out, and I advise you to stay warm and dry by the fire as I do," said Meg with a shiver. Now she's saying that 2 long walks in the morning have been enough, okay? You don't need to go out for more exercise. It's cold and dull outside, meaning it's a snowy afternoon, right? There is no sun, it's cold, it's dull. Going out like this can, a person can catch a cold in such a situation. So Meg says that she better stay warm and dry by the fire like Meg does. She is advising Jo to stay in. "Never take advice, can't keep still all day, and not being a pussycat. I don't like to doze by the fire, I like adventures, and I'm going to find some." Now Jo says that I don't take your advice anyways, so I can't keep still all day, meaning she can't laze around. Like I told you, she doesn't like to sit idle. She's always doing something. And not being a pussycat, meaning she doesn't want to be a pussycat, meaning she doesn't want to, stay home with the fear of falling ill, or she doesn't want to be of no use. She doesn't like to be scared. She says that she can't doze by the fire, meaning she can't sit by the fire and sleep and laze around all day long. She likes adventures, meaning she likes something that's, kind of dangerous but fun to do. And she's going out to find an adventure, basically. Meg went back to toast her feet and read Ivanhoe, and Jo began to dig paths with great energy. So Meg, who was advising her sister to not, go out or she'll catch a cold, has now given up because her sister is not ready to listen. So she goes back to toasting her feet, meaning warming her feet by the fire. She's sitting by the fire and she's giving warmth to her feet. Like, in the bonfire you might have seen, people sit with their arms and legs stretched, right? They're warming their feet and hands. That's what Meg is doing right now. And she goes back to reading Ivanhoe. Now, if you guys haven't read Ivanhoe, it's a very good novel. You should read it. And as you can see, it's a very old novel as well. And Jo began to dig paths with great energy, meaning it's a very snowy day, right? So she's digging herself a path. The snow was light, and with her broom, she soon swept a path all around the garden for Beth to walk in when the sun came out and the invalid dolls needed air. So now she was digging a path, and now she had dug a path all around the garden for Beth, another one of her sisters, to walk around. And when the invalid dolls needed air, meaning the dolls with broken limbs which Beth loved. Now Beth loved dolls, you can see from here. So Beth spent her time with the dolls, and whenever she thought that the dolls needed air, she would come out here in the garden. Now the garden separated the Marches' house from that of Mr. Lawrence. Both stood in a suburb of the city, which was still country-like, with groves and lawns, large gardens, and quiet streets. Now this garden that Jo had dug a path around was separating the March's house from Mr. Lawrence's house. Both stood in the suburb of the city. Suburb of the city meaning, like there are, the city is urban, suburban, and then there is other classifications. So this was a suburb of the city. So it was still country-like. Country-like means you might have seen, right? Like there's fields around, there's not concrete roads, but like good enough roads for the carts to go around, right? So it was still a country-like place. Like, you can say it has a town vibe to it, with groves and lawns, large gardens, and quiet streets. Meaning it's not very busy. It's not like a city wherein, everybody is in a rush all the time. You're doing, there's always cars around and lot of disturbance. No, not like that. It's a very calm place. There is fields and gardens and like you can say greenery all around, and it's very quiet over there. A low hedge parted two estates. On one side was an old brown house looking rather bare and shabby, robbed of the vines that in summer covered its walls and the flowers which then surrounded it. On the other side was a stately stone mansion, plainly betokening every sort of comfort and luxury, from the big coach house and well-kept grounds to the conservatory and the glimpses of lovely things one caught between the rich curtains. Okay, so now they have first described the March's house, and then they have described Mr. Lawrence's house. Correct? On one side was a low hedge on one side was an old brown house. So how was the March's house? Old brown house, rather bare and shabby, robbed of the vines that in summer covered its walls and the flowers which then surrounded it. So how was the March's house, or how is the March's house described? This is what you have to write. Now on the other side was a stately stone mansion, plainly betokening every sort of comfort and luxury. This shows that the Marches were not very poor, they were not very well-to-do, but Mr. Lawrence was pretty rich. Okay, you can say he was dripping with money, because he had, it had every sort of comfort and luxury, from the big coach house and well-kept grounds to the conservatory. Conservatory means it's a glass room outside the house. It's like, greenhouse sort of thing. You might have seen it in movies when people, those who have huge place in front of their house, they'll make a greenhouse. It's a glass house kind of structure. So it had a conservatory and glimpses of lovely things one caught between the rich curtains. Every sort of comfort and luxury was there in the house, and it was very well maintained too, because their side of the gardens was very well kept. The grounds were well maintained. Yet it seemed a lonely, lifeless sort of house, for no children frolicked on the lawn, no motherly face ever smiled at the windows, and few people went in and out except the old gentleman and his grandson. Now, despite the fact that Mr. Lawrence's house was very well-to-do, it had every comfort in it, it still missed what a home needs. अगर घर पे कोई ना हो, it's just riches, अमीर से अमीर घर हो लेकिन घर वाले ही ना हो अच्छे, कोई प्यार से रहने वाला ना हो. Imagine a house जिसमें सिर्फ एक दादाजी and पोता या पोती रहते हैं, and ना मम्मी पापा है, ना कोई चाचा चाची है, ना घर पे कोई relatives है, एक दादा और एक पोता. Does it seem like it's a very happy family? It's a very, well, you can say, kept family. There is no happiness in this family. When there's a mother and a father and other relatives, the family is complete in a sense. There is people to love, there are stories to share, the memories you make, and just the feeling of living in a well-knit family is missing in this house. Despite the fact that the people there are very rich. They can buy anything, but not the happiness of having a family. To Joe's lively fancy, this fine house seemed a kind of enchanted palace full of splendors and delights to which no one enjoyed. So now to Joe's lively fancy, meaning Joe was a imaginary girl, like not imaginary girl, but like she could imagine things, and to her fancy, to her imagination, it seemed like, the house was an enchanted palace, meaning a palace with magic. It could provide you with everything, but no one was there to enjoy the enchantment, the magic that the palace held. Full of splendors and delights, meaning it had everything, every sort of comfort, every sort of luxury, anything you could have demanded of, but still no one enjoyed all of these splendors and delights. She had long wanted to behold these hidden glories and to know the Lawrence boy, who looked as if he would like to be known if he only knew how to begin. So she always wanted to go inside the house and check, right? She always wanted to know what the things the house held, how comfort, how luxurious, or how nicely the house is kept. And she also always wanted to be friends with the Lawrence boy. Now, why is this? Because Lawrence boy, he was very lonely. वो अपने घर पे बैठा रहता था. There would be no one to talk to him, and she would think that boy, Lawrence boy, could use a friend. He would love to have someone to talk to, but just he was very shy to approach someone. होता है ना, when you want to be friends with someone but you don't know कि उन्हें कैसे approach करें, उनसे कैसे बात करें, small talk क्या करना है. So you're very shy. You don't even approach the person. Since the party, she had been more eager than ever and had planned many ways of making friends with him, but he had not been seen lately, and Joe began to think he had gone away, when she one day spied a brown face at an upper window looking wistfully down into the garden where Beth and Amy were snowballing one another. Okay, so she attended a party where she met this boy, and she was like, okay, now she was thinking of many ways to make friends with somebody. It just helps when you already have a small chit chat pehle, and then it helps. Then you think, okay, we can build upon this friendship. But since then she had not seen him. उस दिन से वो दिखा ही नहीं था घर पे. Until one day she sees a brown face staring down in the garden where Beth and Amy were snowballing one another. Wistfully meaning longingly, sadly meaning thinking that he too wanted to play with them. He too wanted to play in the snow with them. So he was looking at them in a way where he too wanted to approach them and play with them. And Joe had thought that he had gone away until she saw that he is looking at them. That boy is suffering for society and fun, she said to herself. His grandpa does not know what's good for him and keeps him shut up all alone. So now she's thinking that the boy is suffering for society and fun, meaning he's suffering to have friends. He's suffering to, have fun, because there is nobody he talks to, nobody he's friends with, and nobody he's having fun with. But looking at him, it's very well known that he is lacking all of those things. He wants to go out and make friends. He wants to have fun with people. And then she thinks that his grandpa doesn't even know what's best for him, because grandfather, now rich guy, he's very money oriented, he's busy in his business and stuff. He doesn't realize that his grandson needs people to be friends with. She's thinking that he doesn't know what his grandson needs, and he's keeping him shut up and all alone in that house, right? It's almost like he's being held captive. He needs a party of jolly boys to play with, or somebody young and lively. I have a great mind to go over and tell the old gentleman so. Now she's thinking that, he needs a party of jolly boys, meaning a group of other boys his age or people who play around with him, just so he could have somebody. And she says, if not a group of boys, he needs someone young and lively, meaning someone who's his age, around his age, and has a lively spirit, meaning they want to enjoy. They're ready to enjoy with him. I have a great mind to go over and tell the old gentleman. So now she's, thinking that she should go and talk to the boy's grandfather, Mr. Lawrence, about the fact that his grandson needs company. The idea amused Joe, who liked to do daring things and was always scandalizing Meg by her queer performances. The plan of going over was not forgotten, and when the snowy afternoon came, Joe resolved to try what could be done. She saw Mr. Lawrence drive off and then sallied out to dig her way down to the hedge, where she paused and took a survey. All quiet, curtains down at the lower windows, servants out of sight, and nothing human visible but a curly black head leaning on a thin hand in the upper window. Now, like I told you, Joe was an adventurous person. She liked to do daring things. She liked to do things that were not usually done by others. So, this idea of going over to an old man who doesn't talk to anybody, who has this khadoos image, and telling him that, your grandson needs company, you don't know what your grandson needs, so let me tell you, he needs company. No other person would ever go and approach a person whom they've never talked to and tell them that their grandson needs company, right? But Joe, being the daring person she is, decides that she wants to do that. She did not forget the plan, but she didn't even execute it. And when the snowy afternoon came, Joe resolved to try what could be done. So now when the snowy afternoon, when she's digging the path, she decides to do whatever can be done to help that boy. When she saw Mr. Lawrence drive off, when she saw that Mr. Lawrence had, gone away, she set out to do something, meaning, sallied means set out to do something, meaning she walked over there with a purpose, out to dig her way down to the hedge. Hedge meaning the place where, their lawn and the grounds were separated. where she paused and took a survey. Took a survey means she looked all around. What is there? How many people? Who are there? Right? So she saw that everything is quiet, meaning there is no activity whatsoever wherever she is looking. The curtains are drawn at the lower windows. Servants are out of sight, and nothing human is visible but a curly black head leaning on the thin hand at the upper window. Meaning, she saw there are no servants, there is nobody working there, and no movement, but just one boy with curly head who is sitting there with his head rested on his hand. So looking at Laurie on the upper window, she says, "There he is." She exclaims, "Poor boy, all alone and sick this dismal day." Meaning, it's such a nice day, but he's still all alone and he's sick, so he can't really enjoy the beautiful day, right? Though not beautiful, but it's a snowy day when one can play around and stuff, but he can't even do that. "It's a shame. I'll toss up a snowball and make him look out and then say a kind word to him." So she's like, it's a shame that he can't enjoy the day really, but then she decides that she'll throw up a snowball at him and then make sure that he looks, make it so that she grabs his attention. Up went a handful of soft snow, and the head turned at once, showing a face which lost its listless look in a minute, and the big eyes brightened and the mouth began to smile. Jo nodded and laughed and flourished her broom as she called out. So now she throws the snowball at the boy's window, and then the listless look in his face is gone, meaning the lacking energy, the look wherein there is nothing that he's actually observing is gone. Now he has something to focus his vision on, and he's looking out for why she has even grabbed his attention. So she flourished his broom, meaning she's waving the broom as she's talking to the boy. "How do you do? Are you sick?" Now she's inquiring if he's sick. Laurie opened the window and croaked out as hoarsely as a raven. So he opens the window and croaks out, meaning his voice is like a croak. It's from the throat. Whenever someone has a throat infection, the voice is a bit weird, right? It's a very coarse voice. It's not very smooth. "Better, thank you. I've had a bad cold and been shut up a week." So he says that he's better than before, but he's had a very bad cold and he hasn't talked to anybody in a week. "I'm sorry. What do you amuse yourself with?" Now she's asking, okay, you're not talking to anybody, so what do you do to amuse yourself? What do you do for time pass, basically? "Nothing. It's as dull as tombs up here." So now she's asking, what does he do to, keep himself occupied while he is so sick and has no one to talk to? He says, "I don't really do much because it's as dull as domes here," meaning that basically there's no one around here and it's a very boring place. "Don't you read?" "Not much. They won't let me." Now she's asking that, don't you read even, because nothing else to do. At least the person will read, right? He's like, "Not much. They don't let me read." "Can't somebody read to you?" Now she's inquiring, if they don't let you read, doesn't anybody read it out for you? "Grandpa does sometimes, but my books don't interest him and I hate to ask Brooke all the time." Now he's saying that Grandpa, Mr. Lawrence, sometimes reads him books, but then, the books that Grandpa reads are not of his interest and the books that he reads are not of Grandpa's interest. And he hates to ask the other person, Brooke, all the time, meaning he doesn't want to disturb this other person as well. "Have someone come and see you then." Now she's suggesting him that have someone come and see him, meaning someone visits him, someone else comes and reads him. "There isn't anyone I'd like to see. Boys make such a row and my head is weak." Now he's saying that there is nobody there that actually, he'd actually want to talk to at this point of time, and he's saying that, young boys make a row, meaning that they're always making a mess, they're talking loudly, they're having fun, but he says that he has a pain in the head. He doesn't want to have those loud voices or nuisance around him. "Isn't there some nice girl who'd read and amuse you? Girls are quiet and like to play nurse." Now she's asking that isn't there any other girl who could come and visit him? If he doesn't like boys' company so much, he could have a girl visit him. He could have girls who are very calm and they have a very nice personality. They won't make much noise, and they also like to play nurse, meaning they like to take care of people. Now you can say it's a nature of girls, right? Now she's asking if there is other girls that could come around. "You don't know any." Now he's telling her that he doesn't know any girls who could come around and read to him. "You know us," began Jo, and laughed and stopped. Now she always wanted to go to that house. She always wanted to see what the house was like from inside. She also wanted to be friends with Laurie. So she's now suggesting that Laurie knows the 4 girls, right? He knows Jo, Meg, Beth and Amy. And then the guy realizes, "So I do. Will you come, please?" cried Laurie. Now he is saying that, "Of course, I know you guys, so why don't you come and visit?" "I'm not quite nice, but I'll come if mother will let me. I'll go ask her. Shut the window like a good boy and wait till I come." Now she's telling that, "I'm not really quiet and nice. I mean, we know Jo, right? She can't sit idle. She's always doing something. So she isn't the typical quiet and nice nurse that Laurie needs right now, but she's like, I'll still come around if my mother lets me." Now she's telling him to shut the window and wait till she comes. Because, of course, he's cold. He keeps the window open longer. He's gonna have a worse case of cold than he already does. With that, Jo shouldered her broom and marched into the house, wondering what they would all say to her. So now, after making a small talk with him, after telling him that she might come there if her mother allows, she keeps the broom on her shoulders and marches back to her house, meaning goes back to her house with a very firm purpose. And she's also thinking what the people in her house would say. Laurie was in a flutter of excitement at the idea of having company, and flew about to get ready, for Mrs. March said, as he was a little gentleman, and did honor to the coming guest by brushing his curly pate, putting on a fresh color, and trying to tidy up the room, which in spite of half a dozen servants was anything but neat. So now Laurie was finally having company. He was having someone over after a week of not talking to anybody. He was very excited, right? So in a flutter of excitement, he gets ready, he gets the house ready, and as Mrs. March has said that he was a gentleman, a little gentleman, and he did honor to the guest by brushing his curly pate, meaning by brushing his hair, or you can say combing his hair just so it was neat, and put on a fresh color, meaning he wore a new dress just so he looked fresh and not as boring and dull and sick, and trying to tidy up the room, which in spite of a dozen servants was anything but neat. Meaning, despite the fact that there were so many workers around him, so many servants at his place, his house was not well kept, right? So he had to do it himself just so he could make the house presentable to Jo. Presently, there came a loud ring, then a decided voice asking for Mr. Laurie, and a surprised-looking servant came running up to announce a young lady. So, as he was clearing up the place, Jo comes there, she rings the bell, and she announces that she is here for Mr. Laurie. And a surprised-looking servant, because of course, the servants are not expecting anybody. The boy hasn't had any visitors since a week. Only his grandfather comes around and then leaves in some time, right? So to know that he's having company, the servant is surprised, and he comes to announce that Jo has come to visit Laurie. "All right, show her up. It's Miss Jo," said Laurie, going to the door of his little parlor to meet Jo, who appeared looking rosy and quiet at her ease, with a covered dish in one hand and Beth's 3 kittens in the other. So, he's telling her, "All right, show her up. I know, it's Miss Jo," he says, and then going to the door of his little parlor, meaning to his room, you can say. He receives Jo over there, who is looking very nice, right? She's looking rosy and quiet at her ease, meaning she's not unwell, right? So she is very presentable, with a covered dish in one hand and Beth's 3 kittens in the other. So she has bought him something to eat and the 3 kittens for him to play with. "Here I am, bag and baggage," she said briskly. So she's announcing that, "Here I am, I've come to visit you," and she is showing that she has bought the dish and the kittens for him to play with. "Mother sent her love and was glad if I could do anything for you. Meg wanted me to bring some of her blanc mange she makes. It's very nicely, and Beth thought her cats would be comforting. I know you'd laugh at them, but I couldn't refuse. She was so anxious to do something." So she says that mother has sent her love, and her mother was really happy if Jo could help a sick boy, right? And she shows that she's bought blanc mange. It's basically almond flavored milk pudding, right? You might have seen it as a dish besides custards and puddings. So she has bought a dish that Meg had made, and she also brings the 3 cats that Beth had asked her to take along. Now all the people in the family had something, right? Her mother had told her to greet him from her side. Her sister had given the blanc mange, and this girl was going to read out to him. So she was very interested in helping him as well. So she brings the cats in. It so happened that Beth's funny loan was just the thing for in laughing over the kids. Laurie forgot his bashfulness and grew sociable at once. So, looking at the kittens, playing around with them, laughing with them, Laurie forgot the shy side or, the fact that he was sick, and he enjoys the playtime with the kittens. That looks too pretty to eat, he said, smiling with pleasure as Joe uncovered the dish and showed the blank man surrounded by a garland of green leaves and the scarlet flowers of Amy's pet geranium. Now, she's decorated the blank man so well, and she's, made it so presentable, she's plated it so well that he's saying it's just too pretty to eat. How has she decorated it? Surrounded by a garland of green leaves and the scarlet flowers of Amy's pet geranium. Geranium is a flowering plant that is grown inside the house usually. It isn't anything, only they all felt kindly and wanted to show it. So, she's saying that it's not much of a trouble, and then she says that all of them wanted to help him in a way or the other. Tell the girl to put it for your tea. It's so simple you can eat it, and being soft, it will slip down your throat without hurting the sore throat. What a cozy room this is. Now she says that ask your servant or the girl who works here to put it away for your tea time, and you can have it with it. And because it's very soft, it won't hurt your sore throat while you eat it. Then she looks around and exclaims, right? It's a very cozy room. It's a very comfortable room. It might be if it was kept nice, but the maids are lazy and I don't know how to make them mind. It worries me though. So she's like, it's a very nice room, but he says that it would have been better if the maids were doing their work. But then he says that they aren't really taking care of the cleanliness around, and that he too can't make them do it, or he himself doesn't do it really. I'll write it up for you in 2 minutes, for it only needs to have the hearth brushed so that the things made straight in the mantelpiece. So, and the books put here and the bottles there, and your sofa turned from the light and the pillows plumped up a bit. Now then you're fixed. So now, she takes it upon herself to make the room very good for him. So what she says is, it needs to have the hearth brushed like so, and then she does it. And the things made straight on the mantelpiece. So she's organizing the place. She's making the home look neat and tidy and livable for him. And then doing some adjustments. What does she do? Has the hearth brushed, the things made straight on the mantelpiece, books put up there in a place, bottles in a place, and the sofa turned from the light, and pillows plumped up a bit. So she's basically made 6 changes that you need to remember. They might ask you, what does Joe do to make the place right for Laurie? And so he was, for as she laughed and talked, Joe had whisked things into place and given quite a different air to the room. Laurie watched her in respectful silence, and when she beckoned him to his sofa, he sat down with a sigh of satisfaction, saying gratefully. Now, he looks at her do the job, and he's very respectful about it, because his mates who are hired to do the job aren't doing it, but this girl who's just come to visit him is doing it for him, so he's very thankful. And once she's done, she asks him to come and take a seat on the sofa. He sits there with a sigh of satisfaction, meaning when you're sick, even your environment is very important. As long as the environment is clean and very nice, you feel good to be around there and you recover faster, right? So because she had done this, he actually felt better, right? The environment was cleaner now. He might get better sooner. He sits down with a sigh of satisfaction and he says gratefully, "How kind you are." Yes, that's what it wanted. Now please take the big chair and let me do something to amuse my company. Now he says that you're really kind, and now because she has done so much, right? He's asking her to please take a big chair, take a comfortable big chair, and he says that I'll do something to amuse my company now. Meaning she's come there to visit him in his place, and she's doing all the work, right? So now he's like, I'll do the work. Let him play the host for some time. No, I came to amuse you. Shall I read aloud? And Joe looked affectionately towards some inviting books nearby. Now she says that, no, I have come here to amuse you. She says that I'm here to read you something. I'm here to entertain you. I'm here to give you company, right? And then she suggests that she could read something from the book. And she's looking affectionately towards some inviting books nearby. Joe is a reader, okay? She loves to read a lot. And the fact that she had such a huge bookshelf full of books now that she could read to him, she's very excited. Now he says, thank you, I've read all those. And if you don't mind, I'd rather talk, answered Laurie. Now, he said that, no, I don't want to read any of those because he's already read those. So, he's so idle, he's already read all of those things and he's not even interested in them. So, he says that he'd rather talk with Joe. Not a bit. I'll talk all day if you'll only set me going. Beth says I never know when to stop. Now, she said that she doesn't really mind if, he only wants to talk, and she's like, putting up a talk here as well. So she's like, I can talk all day long if you don't stop me, and Beth says that I never know when to stop. Is Beth the rosy one who stays at home good deal and sometimes goes out with a little basket? Asks Laurie with interest. Now he's getting to know these four girls. So he asks, is Beth the rosy one who's mostly home but sometimes goes out with the basket? So he's trying to know who the family members are. Yes, that's Beth. She's my girl, and a regular good one she is. Now she says, yeah, the girl you're talking about, that's Beth. She's my sister and she's a very nice girl. The pretty one is Meg and the curly haired one is Amy, I believe. So now he's asking about the other ones. He's asking, the pretty one is Meg and the curly haired one is Amy, right? How did you find out? Laurie colored up but answered frankly. Why, you see, I often hear you calling out to one another, and when I'm alone up here, I can't help looking over. Now he's saying that, I've always heard you guys call out to one another, and when he's alone, he cannot just sit there, right? And his curiosity takes the better part of him and he ends up looking into their house. You always seem to be having such good times. I beg your pardon for being so rude, but sometimes you forget to put down the curtains at the window where the flowers are. And when the lamps are lighted, it's like looking at a picture to see the fire and you all around the table with your mother. Now he says that, I look into your house and it might seem rude, but sometimes you forget to put up a curtain in a window. And, he looks at it and he's saying that looking at you guys on the table, it's like looking at a picture with the fire and the girls with their with their mother and sitting all around the fire. Her face is right opposite and it looks so sweet behind the flowers, I can't help watching it. I haven't got any mother, And Laurie poked the finger to hide a little twitching of the lips that he could not control. So now he's saying that he doesn't have a mother, and looking at this family image of the girls and their mother makes him really happy. And he says that because he doesn't have a mother, looking at her sweet face makes him feel good, and he feels happy for the girls. He enjoys the scene. And then there's a slight twitch of the lips that he could not control. Meaning he's feeling like crying because he himself doesn't have a mother. So he's getting that happiness, that comfort from looking at others. The solitary, hungry look in his eyes went straight to Jo's warm heart. She had been so simply taught that there was no nonsense in her head, and at 15 she was as innocent and frank as any child. Laurie was sick and lonely, and feeling how rich she was in home and happiness, she gladly tried to share it with him. Her face was very friendly and her sharp voice unusually gentle as she said, Now the solitary, hungry look, meaning the very sad, alone, hungry, meaning not hungry as in for food, but for love, for affection, for a family. Like I told you, the house had every sort of comfort and luxury, but not the love of a mother, not a father's, you can say, strong hands around the boy. He was just looking after his grandfather. The grandfather was looking after him, and he was very lonely as such. So this hunger for love and affection was seen by Jo, and she was rich in terms of, having a family, having the happiness. She was very simply taught, meaning there was no other thoughts, there was no, you can say, jealousy or malice in her head. She was rich in terms of having a family and happiness. So she wanted to share these riches. She wanted to share her happiness and family with the lonely Laurie, who craved all of these things. Her face was very friendly, meaning she had a very nice, friendly expression, and she said very gently, We'll never draw that curtain anymore, and I give you leave to look as much as you like. I just wish, though, instead of peeping, you'd come over and see us. Now she's saying that, now that I know you're looking at this scene and, feeling happy with us, I'll never put the curtain again. You can look as much as you want. You can enjoy the family as much as you want. But she says that instead of, looking through the window, why don't you come over and join us? Why don't you also become a part of this happy family picture? Mother is so splendid, she'd do you heaps of good, and Beth would sing to you if I begged her to, and Amy would dance. Meg and I would make you laugh over our funny stage properties, and we'd have jolly times. Wouldn't your grandpa let you? Now she's saying that, mother is very nice, she'd do you heaps of good, and, she'd cook you anything you want, she'd look after you like a mother. Beth would sing to you if I begged her to. She's saying that if I, request Beth, she will also sing for you. Meg and Amy will dance. And she's saying that Meg and Jo would make him laugh over the funny stage properties, meaning they'd do skits, they'd do small performances that would make Laurie laugh. And we'd have jolly times. we'll have happy times, we'll spend time happily together. Then she asked if his grandfather will let him come. I think he would if your mother asked him. He's very kind though, he doesn't look so, and he lets me do what I like, pretty much. Only he's afraid I might be a bother to strangers, began Laurie, brightening more and more. Now, he's very happy at this invitation he's gotten to the March's house. He wants to spend time with the mother and the girls anyway because, being lonely, he craves that family attention. So he's like, what? He's very kind and he'll let me come if your mother asks him. And, he allows me to do everything. And he's only afraid that I might be a bother to strangers. Meaning, his grandfather doesn't want him to disturb others. And that's why he keeps him in the company of, the workers and all the books that he has kept in the library. We're not strangers, we're neighbors. And you needn't think you'd be a bother. We want to know you and I've been trying to do it this ever so long. We haven't been here a great while, but we have got acquainted with all our neighbors but you. Now she said that, we're not strangers, we're neighbors. So neighbors, it's said that neighbors are like extended family. Neighbors are actually very close to you. So she says that, we're not strangers, we're neighbors. And then because we are neighbors, you want to know you. It wouldn't be a bother if you come over. It's actually a very good thing. We want to get to know our neighbors. We want to get close to our neighbors. And she also says that, we haven't been here for very long. We have been here for some time. And we know every neighbor of ours but you guys. You see, Grandpa lives among his books and doesn't mind much what happens outside. Now she is saying that, Grandpa, he lives among his books. He's always reading. He's busy in his own world. And then he doesn't really socialize much. Mr. Brooke, my tutor, doesn't stay here, Now he's saying that Mr. Brooke, who's the tutor of this boy, doesn't really stay there much. And I have no one to go about with me. So I just stop at home and get on as I can. So now he's saying that I really don't have company. My tutor doesn't stay here. My grandpa always reading. So, I just stay at home and I do whatever I can all alone and just go about life like this. That's bad. You ought to make an effort and go visiting everywhere you're asked. Then you'll have plenty of friends and pleasant places to go. Never mind being bashful. It won't last long if you keep going. Now she's saying that it's really bad that you don't have company and the fact that you just stay home and alone all the time, right? And she says that you should go around, you should make friends, you should have good places to go to if you're ever sad. And then she's like, never mind being bashful, never do this thing where you're sad and it doesn't go good for a long time. And life is very short when you're sad. Laurie turned red again but wasn't offended at being accused of bashfulness, for there was so much goodwill in Joe, it was impossible not to take her blunt speeches as kindly as they were meant. Now Laurie turned red, meaning he's kind of, embarrassed, you can say, and then he isn't offended though, because, whatever she's saying is all out of care and concern, and, she's saying it with such innocence that it's difficult to think of it as anything but, concern, right? So he understands that it's just because she cares that she's saying this. Do you like your school? Asked the boy, changing the subject, after a little pause during which he stared at the fire and Joe looked about her, well pleased. Now he's asking, do you like your school? Do you like the place where you study? Now, he changes the subject and he stares to the fire and Joe looks, very proudly around herself and says, don't go to school. I'm a businessman. Girl, I mean. I go to wait on my great aunt, and a dear cross old soul she is too. Now he says that she says that I don't really go to school, I'm a business woman or girl and she's earning, right? And she says that she goes to wait on, meaning take care of a great aunt. You can say that she's just, going there to spend time with her great aunt. And she says that she's a dear cross old soul too, meaning that she's, an old fashioned word for anger, meaning cross, meaning you can say, I am cross with that person, meaning you're angry with that person because, they've done something to offend you. So she's always angry and, she's not very much of a happy, enthusiastic, good company type of soul, but she goes there to wait on her, meaning to take care of her, to give her company. Laurie opened his mouth to ask another question, but remembering just in time that it wasn't manners to make too many inquiries into people's affairs, he shut it again and looked uncomfortable. Now, he opens his mouth to ask something, but he realizes that, asking too many questions about someone else's family wouldn't be a very well-mannered thing to do. So he just stops and he's uncomfortable now. Joe liked his good breeding and didn't mind having a laugh at Aunt March, so she gave him a lively description of the fidgety old lady, her fat poodle, the parrot that talked Spanish, and the library where she reveled. Now, she understood that there is something that he wants to know, and so, good breeding means good manners, how well he is taught. She likes that he is so, well-mannered around her and the kind of culture he has. So she didn't mind having a laugh at Aunt March, meaning she too didn't mind, sharing something with him about Aunt March of it together. So she gives him a very lively description, meaning a funny description of the fidgety old lady, her fat poodle, and the parrot that talked Spanish, and the library where she reveled. Reveled meaning enjoyed in a very calm way, basically. She enjoyed her life over there in the library in a very calm way, not in a very, disco dancing, not like that. It's basically shant. People who enjoy nature, right? They revel in the nature. It's a very calm sort of enjoyment, soothing, peaceful. Laurie enjoyed that immensely, and when she told him the prim old gentleman who came once to woo Aunt March, and in the middle of a fine speech, how Paul had tweaked his wig off, and his great dismay, the boy lay back and laughed till the tears ran down his cheeks, and a maid popped her head in to see what was the matter. She is describing this one incident where this gentleman who had come to woo Aunt March, and in the middle of a fine speech, how Paul had tweaked his twig off. So now, either the parrot or the dog had either tweaked his wig off. Now he's come here to impress the lady, and her pet does this, takes off his wig, right? And now, to this very funny incident, the boy is laughing a lot, tears running down. He's laughing so much that tears are rolling down his cheeks. He's laughing till his eyes are watering, and the maid, she's worried now. She's looking inside to see what has happened. "Oh, that does me no end of good. Tell on, please," he said, taking his face out of the sofa cushion, red and shining with merriment. Now he's saying that, "Oh my God, this is so funny. Can you tell me something even more funnier, another incident or something?" Much elated with her success, Joe did tell on all about their plays and plans, their hopes and fears for father, and the most interesting events of the little world in which her sisters lived. So now she's like, okay, fine. She is very happy that she has achieved her goal of amusing this boy who lived in front of her. So she goes on to tell him more. She tells him about their plays and plans, their hopes and fears for father, and the most interesting events of the little world. Meaning, it's a very small world, right? They're living in their own happy little world, the mother and the daughters, and the father far away. So, she's telling them about this interesting happenings of the world in which the girls live. Whatever is interesting for 4 young girls, basically. Then they got to talking about books. And to Joe's delight, she found that Laurie loved them as well as she did. So, then they got to the topic of books, and Joe is happy to learn that Laurie and she both loved books. So Joe gets to know that even Laurie loves reading, and then the fact that Laurie has read even more books than her. Now, honestly, as a book reader, I'll tell you, it's very fun to find other readers, right? You love it in their company. You love it when they're talking to you about books. You love discussing these topics, and it's not very usually that you find readers. Even nowadays, when you find other readers, it's a very fun experience. So just like that, Joe was also very excited to find someone with the same hobby as her, and someone whose hobby was very well fed as compared to hers. This boy has read even more books than her. "If you like them so much, come down and see ours. Grandfather is out, so you needn't be afraid," said Laurie, getting up. So he's like, if you love books so much, you should come and see our books, and then he says that grandfather isn't home, so you need not be afraid of what happens. "I'm not afraid of anything," returned Joe with a toss of her head. So now what happens till now is basically Joe is a very lively girl. She likes to help people, always doing something, and she wants to be friends with this guy named Laurie who lives opposite to her house. And she does manage to become friends with him on the day he's sick. So she's come here to amuse him, They have become friends. They're discussing their hobbies about books, and now Joe has been invited by him to come down and look into the library. So guys, this will be a two-part video wherein the first part ends here. The next part will be after this, what happens, Joe goes down, what books she sees, and what happens next. And that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and comment down below what else do you want from me. And don't forget to check out the other chapters that we've done for class 12 and the maths chapters we have solved as well. Thanks for watching. Bye.